effing grifters. So
I just wanted to thank all of you for welcoming me into the Invictus family.
But Invictus funds were directed towards private jets, five-star hotels, and transportation for Harry and Meghan.
Somehow this balloons from an event that cost $1 million the first year they did it to $63 million now. Mm-hmm. Harry has ballooned the budget from $1 million. It cost $1 million to do it with 400 people. It's now $63 million with an extra 140 people. What the
How does an international sporting event created to celebrate and support wounded service members end up surrounded by questions over a reported $63 million price tag? That question has become one of the biggest talking points surrounding Prince Harry, Meghan, and the Invictus Games, placing both the event and the Sussexes under growing public scrutiny. For many critics, the reported cost is only the first chapter of a much wider financial debate. The 2025 Invictus Games in Vancouver reportedly carried a cost of around $63 million while involving approximately 543 competitors. Based on those reported figures, the total works out to roughly $118,000 per participant, a number that immediately caught the attention of commentators and royal watchers alike. As soon as those figures began circulating, people started asking how such a large budget was allocated and whether every expense could be justified. So where exactly did all that reported funding go? That question spread rapidly across social media and among commentators, with critics quickly comparing Invictus to other sporting events that share a similar mission of supporting wounded and recovering service personnel. Those comparisons became impossible to ignore as more financial details entered the conversation. The American Warrior Games reportedly operate with an annual budget of about $2 million, while a comparable competition in Germany.
But people are a little upset about where the money is going, because right now there's been a 63% drop in actual grants to wounded warriors, despite the fact that they have more money in their bank than ever from carryover. And in Vancouver,
Comparison, the US Warrior Games, a similar competition for wounded American service members, runs on roughly $2 million a year. Germany's Invictus-style competition costs about $200,000 and involves half as many participants. The public's taxes footed a portion of the bill.
Has been reported to function with a much smaller budget, despite hosting nearly half as many participants. Those figures immediately fueled debate, with many wondering why Invictus appeared to require dramatically more funding than programs designed around similar goals. As more analysts, commentators, and members of the public examined the reported numbers, the criticism only intensified. One question continued to dominate the discussion. Why did Invictus reportedly cost so much more? Rather than fading away, the financial debate kept growing as additional reports and comparisons continued to surface, drawing even more attention to the organization's spending. Further reports also claimed that direct charitable support provided to veteran organizations fell by roughly 63% during one reporting period, despite overall revenue reportedly increasing. That claim sparked another wave of criticism and prompted renewed concern among observers who believed that veterans and their long-term support should always remain the organization's primary focus above everything else. Questions became even louder when attention shifted toward the creation of a new six-figure executive position.
2023 Invictus in Dusseldorf, he was injured. He was in a wheelchair that did not have restraint straps, so basically defective hardware. It drives me crazy. I mean, Prince Harry founded these games. He's the public face of Invictus. And has anyone from his office bothered to reach out to you? Has anyone bothered to, from Invictus, after that initial meeting, bothered to reach out and say, hey, let's help out here?
I never heard from anybody, to be honest with you.
Financial reserves reportedly worth millions of dollars, and executive compensation levels that some critics argued appeared unusually high for an organization of this size. Those developments only encouraged closer scrutiny, with many continuing to ask whether the organization's financial priorities truly reflected the mission it was established to serve. A growing number of commentators began asking whether the organization's financial priorities had shifted too far toward administration. Instead of directly supporting the wounded veterans, the Invictus Games were originally created to honor. That criticism gradually expanded beyond Prince Harry himself, with increasing attention turning toward both Harry and Meghan as public interest in the Sussexes' broader role continued to grow. Reports indicated that approximately $15 million came from the Canadian government, while another $15 million was reportedly provided by the government of British Columbia. Those figures immediately placed taxpayers at the center of the conversation, leading many people to ask where public money was ultimately being spent. Calls for greater accountability became louder, with critics repeatedly asking, where is our taxpayers' money actually going?
Oh, the Invictus Games, it's great. It does all this. And then, you start looking into it and you're like, hey, what the heck is going on here? Those 535 competitors had to pay their own way. They had to pay their own housing for the games. They had to pay for their own equipment. And Harry and Meghan got a really nice vacation out of it, with lots of adorational speeches and clapping and crowds gathered for them. They brought in, it was around 62 million.
Not bad.
50% of that was from the government of Canada and BC, meaning that was taxpayers. And when you're dealing with taxpayer monies, people are kind of like, hey, why are we not buying prosthetics?
Right.
As pressure for clearer answers continued to build, as demands for greater transparency intensified, attention shifted toward financial documents that reportedly contained redacted figures, missing details, and contract information that was not fully disclosed. For critics, those omissions only created additional uncertainty rather than providing reassurance about how the reported funding had been managed. Instead of settling the debate, the missing information fueled even more public curiosity. Many observers argued that a more complete financial breakdown would help answer lingering questions about how funds were distributed, what projects received the largest share of spending, and whether the organization's financial decisions reflected its stated mission. Without those details, speculation continued to spread. One document in particular generated another wave of discussion. Some readers interpreted it as suggesting that the head of the Games may have received compensation through two separate channels. At the same time, it is important to note that no public evidence or official admission has emerged showing that Prince Harry or Meghan personally received any of those reported funds.
A growing scandal involving Prince Harry and his last remaining genuine charity project, the Invictus Games. But is it really a charity project at all?
The Games were born more than a decade ago from a promise that I made to myself. A promise to uphold my obligation, a sacred obligation after my own decade and privilege of military service, to do whatever I could to help my fellow brothers and sisters heal, and to champion everything that we stand for.
Even with that distinction, the financial figures themselves continued to spark debate among critics and supporters alike. Yet the money questions were only one part of the story. Behind the scenes, another dispute was steadily gaining momentum. Journalist Paula Froelich published a series of reports covering many of the same issues, bringing renewed attention to topics that some readers believed had not received enough scrutiny. As criticism, unanswered questions, and growing public interest continued to collide, an even bigger question began hanging over the entire controversy. Was an even larger scandal still waiting to emerge? And beyond the financial arguments, another debate was beginning to dominate the conversation. Was Invictus ever truly Prince Harry's project from the very beginning, or was the story far more complicated than many people realized? Not everyone accepts the idea that Prince Harry alone was responsible for creating the Invictus Games. Some critics argue that the foundations for the project were established through the Royal Foundation during the years when both Prince William and Prince Harry were actively working together on major charitable initiatives. From that perspective, they believe the story has always been far more collaborative than it is often presented. According to that viewpoint, Invictus was never the achievement of a single individual, but the result of wider royal support, institutional resources, and the combined efforts of numerous people working behind the scenes. That belief has led some commentators to ask another question altogether. If so many people contributed to building the event, who is now reportedly benefiting the most from everything it has become? For Prince Harry, Invictus evolved into the defining project that gave him purpose, public visibility, and a clear role within royal life. It became one of the causes most closely associated with his public image. Some critics argue that without Invictus, his identity within the monarchy may have developed very differently, making the Games one of the most significant parts of his public legacy. The official account, however, presents a different version of how everything began. According to published reports, including accounts cited by Time magazine, Prince Harry was inspired after attending the Warrior Games in the United States in 2013. That visit is widely recognized as the moment that encouraged him to establish the Invictus Games, creating an international competition where wounded, injured, and sick service members could compete, inspire others, and receive recognition for their resilience and determination. Now, however, another question has started gaining momentum. Is this history one of the main reasons Harry remains so personally connected to Invictus after all these years? For many observers, the discussion is no longer centered only on who deserves credit for launching the Games. Instead, critics argue that the Sussexes became closely associated with a project that carried enormous public goodwill, respect, and admiration, only for the conversation in recent years to become increasingly dominated by questions surrounding financial management, accountability, transparency, and the widely discussed reported $63 million price tag. The pressure also extended beyond Canada. Attention soon shifted toward Birmingham, where reports connected a future edition of the Games to a city already facing well-publicized financial difficulties. As local residents dealt with budget reductions, service cuts, and economic pressures, some began asking whether hosting another large international event represented the best use of available public resources. Those concerns quickly became part of the wider conversation surrounding the Games. Now, the same public figures at the center of this ongoing debate are expected to arrive in Birmingham, where critics continue raising questions about reported spending on luxury hotels, private air travel, security arrangements, and whether those expenses align with the values many people associate with the Invictus mission. Every new report seems to generate another round of discussion and renewed public interest. Then the debate expanded across the Atlantic once again. Reports indicated that San Diego is expected to host the 2029 Invictus Games, immediately prompting another fresh wave of questions about funding, operational costs, and the possible role of taxpayer support. As planning discussions continue, some observers are already asking whether future editions of the Games can avoid the same financial scrutiny, or whether critics will once again view the next destination as just another luxury stop on the map. Questions continued to grow as many observers began wondering whether the financial challenges surrounding the Invictus Games could eventually repeat themselves in other countries. Reports indicated that Australia had stepped away from a proposed $9 million funding commitment connected to a future edition of the Games. That development immediately sparked fresh speculation, with critics asking whether this was simply an isolated decision or a sign that governments were beginning to examine future funding commitments much more carefully. The story took another unexpected turn when reports suggested that organisers were informed only shortly before Australia's funding decision became public. That timing attracted immediate attention, leaving many commentators wondering how such a significant development had unfolded and why the announcement appeared to arrive so close to its public release. For many observers, the sequence of events only added another layer of uncertainty to an already closely watched situation. That detail quickly fueled another wave of discussion. Critics argued that the contrast was difficult to ignore. Why, they asked, was one government reportedly stepping away from a major funding commitment while other governments were still being encouraged to consider investing millions into future editions of the Games? Those questions became increasingly common as more people followed the financial debate. The differing decisions only intensified an already heated conversation about transparency, financial priorities, public accountability, and the long-term direction of the Invictus Games. Rather than bringing the discussion to a close, every new report appeared to create additional questions, encouraging even closer scrutiny from critics and supporters alike. As those financial debates continued to build, the Sussexes found themselves facing another round of public attention. Even amid the growing controversy, Prince Harry continued receiving major international recognition, a development that immediately became another talking point among commentators following the story. That discussion grew louder after Harry appeared on the Time 100 list in the sports category alongside globally recognized athletes such as LeBron James and Patrick Mahomes. The online reaction was swift and highly divided. While some viewed the recognition as a reflection of his work with Invictus, others openly questioned how the selection process operated and why Harry had been included alongside some of the world's most accomplished sports figures. The announcement quickly became another widely debated topic across social media and news coverage. Critics also pointed to reported business connections involving Time magazine's ownership structure and BetterUp, the company where Prince Harry serves as Chief Impact Officer. Those reports generated additional discussion online, although they did not establish that those connections influenced the selection itself. If you'd like to explore another related story, I've already covered Meghan's reported efforts to capture attention during this period on my channel. You'll see that video recommended on your screen once this one ends. Moments like these continued reinforcing a broader perception held by some critics. They argued that Harry's public profile has benefited significantly from influential networks, institutional backing, and high-level connections, rather than individual accomplishments alone. Whether that perception ultimately proves fair or unfair remains a matter of opinion, but each new high-profile recognition or opportunity has continued adding momentum to that ongoing public debate. Another unexpected moment soon dominated headlines and sent social media into overdrive. Prince Harry attended an NBA Finals game as a reported guest of the league commissioner, a visit that could have been remembered as a high-profile public appearance. Instead, the online conversation quickly shifted in an entirely different direction, creating yet another viral debate surrounding the Duke of Sussex. Rather than focusing on the invitation itself, many viewers immediately noticed where Harry was seated inside the arena. Television cameras showed him sitting several rows away from the courtside seats, and within minutes, social media users had transformed the moment into one of the internet's latest running jokes. What began as a simple camera shot rapidly evolved into a trending discussion across multiple platforms. Memes spread quickly as viewers compared the television broadcast to a game of Where's Waldo, challenging one another to spot the prince among the crowd. One widely shared comment read, "8th row, for the man who's 8th in line to the throne." Whether people viewed the joke as humorous or unnecessarily harsh, it captured the tone of much of the online reaction and quickly reached millions of users as the images continued circulating across social media. For many critics, the discussion had moved well beyond budgets, financial reports, and questions surrounding funding. They argued that the broader issue had become one of public image and media attention. Increasingly, conversations surrounding the Sussexes appeared to focus less on the purpose of individual events and more on the couple themselves, creating another layer of debate around every major appearance they made together. One of the most frequently repeated criticisms surrounding the Sussexes is the belief among some commentators that Meghan Markle often becomes the central focus during Invictus-related events. Those critics argue that when she attends alongside Prince Harry, media coverage can shift rapidly away from the athletes, the veterans, and the goals of the competition toward discussions about her fashion, public appearances, interactions, and overall presentation instead. According to those observers, this pattern has become particularly noticeable during major public events. They point to social media conversations that sometimes gain momentum within minutes, concentrating less on competition results or inspiring stories from participants, and more on Meghan's presence, body language, clothing choices, or interactions with other guests. Whether that shift happens because of media priorities, online audiences, or celebrity interest remains the subject of ongoing debate. As a result, Invictus, an event established to recognize and celebrate wounded, injured, and sick service members, often finds itself sharing headlines with royal stories that some believe overshadow its original mission. That perception has continued fueling discussion every time another public appearance places the Sussexes at the center of attention rather than the competitors themselves. With every new appearance, the same question seems to return once again. Is Invictus ultimately being defined by its mission or by the public figures most closely associated with it? And as that debate continues, another recurring topic keeps resurfacing alongside it: the intense attention Meghan's outfits receive during Invictus-related appearances, adding yet another layer to an already highly scrutinized public conversation. Whenever Meghan attends Invictus-related events, many critics and online commentators argue that the conversation quickly shifts away from the athletes and the purpose of the Games. Instead, attention often turns to what she's wearing. Within minutes, social media users begin identifying designers, estimating prices, and discussing styling choices, transforming what was intended to be a sporting event, honoring wounded veterans, into an online fashion discussion. Some commentators take that argument further, suggesting Meghan's public image is closely connected to fashion branding and that her appearances naturally generate commercial attention for the labels she wears. They question whether Invictus has become an opportunity for designers to gain valuable exposure rather than keeping the spotlight entirely on the competitors. Supporters, however, see the situation differently. They argue Meghan is simply dressing appropriately for public appearances, while media outlets and online audiences are the ones choosing to emphasize clothing instead of the purpose of the event. Even so, the debate returns almost every time she attends another high-profile appearance. Critics maintain that the pattern is predictable. They argue that once Meghan arrives, headlines increasingly focus on fashion, cameras highlight her appearance, and discussions about the event itself receive less attention. Whether that reflects media priorities or public fascination remains a matter of opinion, but her style has undeniably become part of the wider conversation surrounding the Sussexes and Invictus. Another long-running question now centers on whether Prince Harry remains essential to the identity of the Invictus Games. With ongoing debate surrounding finances, alleged commercial benefits, and continued public scrutiny, some believe the answer appears straightforward at first glance. Looking back, many agree Harry played a central role in bringing the event to life. His public profile, royal background, and connection to wounded service members helped attract worldwide attention in ways few public figures could have matched. However, many of the financial questions being discussed today had not yet emerged during the early years. As Invictus has grown into a major international competition, some critics now argue that the organization may have evolved beyond its original founder. Many critics believe the Invictus Games have grown into something much bigger than one person. They point to the expanding role of governments, sponsors, and international committees, arguing that the event now operates as a well-established global brand that no longer depends on a single individual to succeed. From that perspective, Prince Harry's role is viewed as largely symbolic rather than operational. They argue his presence still brings recognition and media attention, but question whether he remains essential to the daily operation or long-term future of the Games. That raises another question. Is this level of personal branding still necessary for Invictus today? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Supporters strongly disagree with that argument. They believe Harry remains the emotional heart of Invictus, maintaining a unique connection with veterans and serving as the public face that continues to represent the event's mission. Supporters also argue that without Harry, the Games could lose much of the spirit and identity that made them internationally recognized. Critics, however, continue asking the same difficult question. At what point does a founder become less essential to the organization they helped create, and has Invictus reached that stage yet? Another debate surrounding Invictus is whether the event remains focused entirely on veterans or has also become a major public relations platform. Critics argue that headlines often focus on Prince Harry, Meghan, and celebrity appearances instead of the athletes themselves, turning the Games into a global media event where visibility sometimes competes with the sporting mission. Even supporters acknowledge that Invictus operates in a media-driven world where every appearance, photo, and interaction quickly becomes part of a much larger public conversation. That leads to one central question. Is Invictus still defined by its mission, or is it increasingly being shaped by its public visibility? Now, as the next Invictus Games draw closer, the same debate is returning once again. Questions about funding, visibility, public perception, and the future direction of the event continue to dominate the conversation as another edition approaches. Online discussions have also brought older controversies back into the spotlight, including a petition calling for changes in the leadership surrounding the Invictus Games. That petition has circulated for quite some time and continues to generate strong reactions from both supporters and critics alike. Some people question whether the petition had any meaningful impact, while others believe it reflects broader concerns that have never fully disappeared. If you want a deeper breakdown of that entire story, I've already covered it in another video on this channel. You'll be able to watch it on your screen once this video ends. But as the next Invictus Games get closer, another question is already taking center stage. Should Meghan Markle attend the event at all? Supporters argue that her presence is a natural part of standing alongside Prince Harry and supporting the Games. Critics, however, believe every appearance shifts attention away from the athletes and creates another wave of media scrutiny surrounding the Sussexes. That brings the conversation back to the same ongoing debate: the mission of Invictus versus the attention generated by the people associated with it. With every new edition of the Games, those questions seem to return, keeping the discussion alive long before the opening ceremony even begins. Before you go, I'd really like to hear your opinion about this. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Invictus is still staying true to its original mission, or has the conversation surrounding it changed too much over the years? If you have ideas for future videos or topics you'd like me to cover, leave those in the comments as well. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest uploads. Also, be sure to check out the videos now appearing on your screen, one covering the claims about Meghan potentially outshining Harry, and another exploring the petition and the continuing debate surrounding the Invictus Games. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.